Episode 24. What if it all didn't depend on you? I think a lot of men are tired, not physically tired, not because they aren't sleeping enough, soul tired. The kind of tired that just follows you around, the kind that sits in the background of your life, the kind that never seems to fully go away. And for a long time, I thought it was because I had too much going on. I had too much responsibility. Family, bills, the business, the future, the decisions, the pressure. And, I kind of realized that I wasn't just carrying responsibility, I was carrying ownership. And when you kind of consider those two things, they're not really the same. I remember hearing a lesson years ago about ownership. And, you can go on a beautiful vacation, right? You can go enjoy the beach, enjoy the view, enjoy the experience, and then leave. But the moment you own a vacation home, everything changes. Now there's taxes, insurance, maintenance, repairs, decisions, worry, attention, responsibility. The ownership comes with obligations. And it got me thinking, because most men are carrying ownership of things that were never really theirs to own. Their children's future, their wife's happiness, their company's success, the economy, the market, the outcome, the timeline, the result. And because they believe it all depends on them, they just stay exhausted. Brother, responsibility is healthy. Ownership, however, this can become crushing, because stewardship says, I will faithfully do my part, but ownership says, I've got to control everything. And that's where I think a lot of us get trapped, especially as providers, especially fathers, leaders, because eventually we start believing that if I stop carrying this, everything falls apart. And if we're being honest, because that's what we do here on the Resurrection Kings podcast, I know that lie really well. The one where I believe if I stop carrying this, everything's going to fall apart. Because for years I believed that if I worked hard enough, if I cared enough, if I loved enough, if I carried enough, I could somehow protect the people that I love from pain. And, if you've been listening, everyone knows how that went. Aidan, my son Aidan, died. And something shattered. Not just my heart, but my illusion of control. This illusion that I had been living, where I thought doing it my way was the only way, was the best way. The illusion that I could carry everything, the illusion that I could protect everyone, the illusion that if I just tried harder, everything would work out, or at the very least, bad things wouldn't happen. And brother, man, that was a painful lesson for me, because suddenly I was forced to face a truth I had spent years avoiding. That I wasn't in control. That I was never God. That I was never able to have control over everything in my life. And neither do you. You're not God either. There is a God, and he's not me, and he's not you. And this is a realization that when we start to surrender, it changes everything. And again, it's not all at once, because surrender has layers. You've heard me talk about layers. There's layers in everything. And in surrender, there were layers for me as well. First, I surrendered the grief when Aidan passed, right? Then I surrendered the questions, the needing to know, the needing to understand. Then I surrendered the business, my business. I surrendered money. I surrendered the future. I surrendered my identity. And every time I thought, okay, Lord, I've finally surrendered, there was another layer, another thing that I found I was still gripping, another thing I was still carrying, another thing I still thought depended on me. And that's the thing about surrender. It isn't losing. I think a lot of people, they hear that word and it conjures up thoughts of weakness, of losing. But it's not. It's releasing ownership. Because most of what exhausts us isn't responsibility. It's control. It's the illusion that we have control. Control over outcomes, control over people, control over timing, control over things that truly belong to God. And brother, control is just heavy, especially when you're carrying things that were never yours to carry. One of the biggest shifts for me happened when I stopped asking, how do I make this happen? And started asking, what is my part? What is my part in this? And when I started to investigate it all sounds so simple now when I say these words out loud, but when I started to look at that, I realized that that is stewardship. Understanding that I don't have control of everything, but I may have a part, and the part that I play is stewardship. My part, not everyone's part, not God's part, but my part. Show up, tell the truth, love well, work diligently, stay faithful, trust God with the outcome. Simple, not easy, but simple. And honestly, that's where peace started showing up for me. Not when my circumstances changed, not because my circumstances changed, but when my ownership changed. Because the moment I stopped trying to be responsible for everything, I finally had energy to be responsible for what actually mattered. The Bible in Matthew chapter 11, verse 28, scripture says, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." The words of Jesus. Notice what Jesus doesn't say here. He doesn't say, carry more. He says, come to me. Because maybe the thing crushing you right now isn't responsibility. Maybe it's ownership. Maybe you've been carrying things God never asked you to carry. Your spouse, your children, your future, your finances, your reputation, your fears, your outcomes. Listen, man, what if it all didn't depend on you? What if your job was faithfulness and God's job was the outcome? What if your role was stewardship, not ownership? Because that's a different way to live, man. And honestly, it might be the first deep breath you've taken in years. And if somewhere in this episode you realized you've been carrying things that were never yours to carry, head over to resurrectionkings.com. The podcast, the Real Fight Field Guide, the Severn app, and the coaching path are all there. Because peace often begins the moment a man stops trying to be God or trying to control everything. And we're just getting started.